So there you are, deep in the backcountry, waking up in your tent to the sound of loons on the water and birds in the trees just after sunrise. You had an okay night's sleep, not great, but not terrible. It's time to hit the trail. But first things first, coffee. And since you're camping, you need it to be quick and convenient. Well, Recess Coffee has you covered with their new Campfire Blend Steeped Packs. Steepable coffee packs, easy to carry in, easy to carry out. Pick up a carton of 10 or individual packs before your next camping trip. For 10% off your order of steeped packs or 12-ounce whole bean bags, use the promo code RECESS46. That's RECESS 46 at recesscoffee.com. This is the 46 of 46 podcast Summit Sessions, where we'll talk all things Adirondack, backcountry, and beyond. From high peak stories and adventures to trail tips and tricks, we'll dive deep into the heart of these mountains and the people who passionately climb them. Adirondack maps and spruce traps, bushwhacks and backpacks. It's all here on the 46 of 46 Summit Sessions. Hello out there, I'm back with yet another Summit Session episode this week. But don't worry, more new trail episodes and campfire story episodes and maybe even some new format episodes are in the works. But for now, I'm back with another Summit Session. And it's going to be a fun episode this week. We're going to keep it light and we're going to just have some fun. There's a lot of places to explore out there, both inside the ADK and beyond. And my guest this week has spent quite a bit of time out on the trail all over the Northeast and the East Coast. He's an Adirondack 46er, he's hiked all 48 of the White Mountains in New Hampshire, and he's even thru-hiked the Appalachian Trail. Needless to say, the man likes hiking regardless of what you may have heard. However, he does have a YouTube channel with over 1 million views, might I add, called Kyle Hates Hiking. And he's the host of the Trail Tales podcast as well. I was even once a guest on that podcast, so it makes sense to have him here on mine. His name is Kyle O'Grady, and he's here with me tonight to talk shop. Just talk about hiking in both the ADK and beyond. And to find out who really hates hiking more, him or me. So Kyle, welcome to the 46 of 46 podcast, and thanks for coming on the show.
James, thank you so much. I love this show. I think you're an awesome creator, so it's honestly a huge honor to be here, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure to have you. First off, congratulations on your YouTube channel surpassing 1 million views. That's an impressive feat. I assume that's a lot of views. 1 million's a huge number. So now that you're kind of like an online celebrity, who picked up the movie rights to your life story? I heard that you turned down Steven Spielberg and Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, I did. Honestly, YouTube's where it's at, so I'm going to keep my stuff on there, if you know what I mean. That's awesome, dude.
That makes perfect sense. I'm
James,
sure.
you're so official, dude. You're so, eloquent and well-spoken. I'm just going to be stumbling over my words this entire podcast, just like I do in mine and on my videos and stuff. So I'm excited to hear this contrast between our way of speaking. This is going to be great.
Oh, that will be interesting. I definitely am not a fluid speaker.
Yes, you are, dude. Shut up. Yes, you are. Everybody listening knows it too.
That's so kind of you. It's funny. We have never met in person, like many people who hike online and have that whole online thing with hiking. We have formed a bit of a friendship through the fact that we're both hikers, we're both podcasters. You grew up in the hardcore music scene, as did I. So on paper, you and I are basically best friends, but we've actually never met in person. But I find that funny. And such is life, I suppose, when you live that internet lifestyle these days.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that too. That is pretty funny. We have a lot in common for sure. I think probably the biggest difference would be the fact that, you're a father and an actual adult, and I'm still just living the bachelor life, kind of messing around here. But yeah, I think we definitely have a lot in common.
Yes,
for sure.
Indeed. I think you're in your mid-20s. When I was your age, I was touring in a hardcore band, and definitely far from where I am now at 34 as far as the adult thing goes, but I appreciate that. But real quick, let's before we kind of get into it, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up? How'd you get into the outdoors? And just take me through your little story.
Sure, man. So I grew up in the Burlington, Vermont area. That's still where I live. So real close to the Adirondacks, obviously. So close that I can see them, but it's still like an hour and a half drive at least, just because of the stupid lake in the way, which I won't get into that. But I'm joking, by the way. The lake is great. But yeah, I grew up here. Just the fact that I live so close to mountains and the Long Trail specifically is kind of how I got into it. I discovered it when I was in high school. And then I promptly went on YouTube, started searching Long Trail, Appalachian Trail, all this stuff. And that's when I found out about, long distance hiking and through hiking specifically. And something just clicked in my stupid 15, 16-year-old head. And I just got this idea that, hey, I'm going to try to do the Appalachian Trail someday. I'm going to do all these peak bagging lists in the Adirondacks and the White Mountains and all this stuff. And then I just kind of stuck with it for forever up to this point, I guess. And then I guess it was around this time last year, November of 2019, is when I started my YouTube channel. And so I just started making often very stupid and silly videos about hiking and, sharing my tips and filming my hikes and all this stuff. People seem to like it quite a bit. And I guess if you want to go back even further, November of 2018, just after I'd finished the Appalachian Trail, that's when I started my podcast, Trail Tales. That was like the very beginning of content creation for me. I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, even less than I do now, which I still really don't know what I'm doing. But I guess that's kind of the overall story. Yeah, dude, I'm just a big hiking nerd, as all of my podcast listeners know, because I remind them at the beginning of every single episode.
Naturally, that would be what happens. I mean, 1 million views on your YouTube channel in a year, that's gotta be, that's impressive, no matter which way you slice it, but that's very cool. So now let me ask you this. Let me just ask you flat out. So you are an Adirondack 46er, and you've hiked the Appalachian Trail. You've thru-hiked it. So how many times a week are you able to work both of those into a conversation ballpark? Like, are we at 100 times a week per, or are we at 200 times a week per?
I don't know. I feel like it's kind of the opposite, because I've said this before on Trail Tales, but I feel like sometimes there's this disconnect between the Appalachian Trail and the White Mountains even, and the Adirondack, just the communities, I guess.
Sure.
And I think that's probably shrinking a little bit nowadays, but I just feel like the cultures are a little bit different. And I feel like I never really noticed that much crossover. Again, until probably more recently, especially as peak bagging has just exploded in popularity. But they're two very different places with a lot of similarities. I'll say that.
Yeah, totally. So another reason why you and I just make sense as friends. I don't like to really talk about it to other people unless I find out they're into hiking. Then it's like, oh, I like hiking too, but I'm definitely never telling them about being a 46er or really anything other than just tell me why you like going outside. I like going outside too. That's interesting. But yeah, there's the joke about how you got to work in that you're a 46er in every sentence, or Appalachian Trail through hiker. I've heard it so many times.
That's right. Or as a couple people said after I finished the AT, they said, "Oh, congrats on finishing the Adirondack Trail." So at the end of the day, I guess they're kind of the same.
Yeah,
to most people, honestly. To
totally.
People who aren't hiking nerds like we are, it's what's the difference? They don't really care too much.
Totally. It's kind of like when you're out hiking, at least here in the ADK, when you're out in the high peaks, if somebody is hiking that you meet on the trail and they're from out west, oh, don't you worry. You're going to know within 5 minutes that they're from out west, because they'll tell you real quick. Oh, hey, how's your hike going? Oh, it's fine. These little hills you hear. I'm from Colorado, dude. So, it's not that bad. Yeah. Cool, man. I didn't ask you that, but sweet.
Yeah, it's also the thing, too, that I've noticed, and I'm 100% guilty of this in the past, so I'm not trying to, just be a jerk to people, but I feel like a lot of time, I've noticed this in the Whites and in the Adirondacks when you're doing the 4,000 footers. When you get up to the top, people are just kind of chilling, talking or whatever, and then eventually someone brings up oh, this is my 30th or my 40th or whatever.
Sure.
And next thing you know, every single person up there that's working towards the 48 or the 46 or whatever is just oh yeah, well this is my blah blah blah, and then you get the guy that's already finished it, and he's oh yeah, this is my second round, blah blah blah, and then next thing you know, everyone's just trying to one up each other. I don't know where I'm going with this, but that popped into my head too. And that's definitely a thing I've been guilty of in the past, and probably a good chunk of your listeners have as well.
Oh,
maybe
I would
even
imagine.
you have, James. I don't know.
I definitely have.
You're a pretty good guy.
Although I have, and I'll tell you the story. And I say this often, actually, pretty much whenever Allen comes up, Allen Mountain, because nobody's hiking Allen that isn't trying to hike all of the high peaks. And typically, when you're on Allen Mountain, you are usually far into your 46 for the most part. So I actually find
in the like jump into Allen
exactly.
It's like their second one,
Exactly.
I mean, it's been done, but yeah, I feel you.
So I find that when people are hiking Allen, that comes up a lot. But I actually kind of like it in that situation because at that point you're kind of close to the end and everyone can kind of enjoy that thing. But ultimately it's nice to just be out hiking in general and doing that thing. So you're obviously quite experienced when it comes to peak bagging and through hiking. Let's talk about, let's break it up a little bit, our little conversation here. Talk about peak bagging. So when did you hike the high peaks? So you've hiked all of the high peaks, all of the whites. Have you done all of the Northeast 115? I assume you've hiked the Vermont mountains and Maine.
Dude, I think I'm 5 away from the Northeast 115.
Nice.
And I have been basically since last summer, and I could have definitely finished it this summer if I committed, but the ones I have left are like way up in northern Maine, like the furthest ones from me, and I'm just like, I just don't feel like doing that drive. I should definitely finish them at some point because I'm so damn close, but I'm not quite there yet, unfortunately.
Well, that's cool. So when did you hike in the 46 high peaks, and when did you hike the whites? And did you mix and mash them? Did you do one list and then the other list? How'd that work out?
Yeah, so I mixed and matched the crap out of them. And it took me a while to do both of them too. I'm not one of these like crazy badass people who can just knock them out in a single season or whatever. So basically, when I first started hiking, back, I guess it wasn't when I first started, around the time I went to college, say, so 2013, 2014, that time frame, senior year of high school, first year of college, whatever. That's kind of when I started branching out from just Vermont hikes. So I was like, okay, went over to the White Mountains for a weekend, did some 4,000 footers over there. Next weekend, went to the Adirondacks, kind of got hooked. And that's when I started to realize like, oh, there's these lists over there. So, I can kind of work towards some sort of hiking goal while I'm doing all these miles to build up to the Appalachian Trail eventually. That was kind of my thought process. And not only that, but I was extremely privileged due to the fact that, first of all, Burlington, Vermont is right smack in the middle of the two ranges, basically, the Whites and the Adirondacks. And I went to school at Clarkson University, which is real close to the Adirondacks. And my family had a summer home at the time that was in, so I guess it would be Western Maine, so real close to the White Mountains. So basically, throughout my 4 years of college, it was go down to the Adirondacks when I could, when I was at school. And then it was try to bang out all the White Mountain 4,000 footers when I was at home during the summer. And then I just kind of mixed and matched. I got a little bit further with the whites. I ended up finishing those in the summer of 2017. And then I didn't finish the 46 until August of 2019. So that one took me a little bit longer. I didn't quite have time to finish them while I was in school. And I finished those up, the year after I finished the AT. So yeah, that's, that's like most of my hiking history right there. Everybody knows now.
Yeah, we just needed to check your resume. That's why I had you list all these things, just so I've
got a couple more things I'm sure we'll get to. Don't you worry, everybody. I've got more.
Don't worry. You will be hiring him for this job once we get through this episode. Well, that's cool. So now let me ask you this. So what do if you're obviously not working towards any specific goal now. And I am a list person just in general in life. So for me, I actually really like lists. And I know some people crap on it and whatnot, but I personally like lists. I think it helps me keep things organized. And I like the idea of here's a list, here's a goal, accomplish that goal, and then move to the next one. That's the type of person I am. So I like lists. So now that you've finished both the 46 and the 48, and on any given Saturday, let's say, where would you go first? You going to go east or you going to go west?
It's tough, dude. Honestly, lately I've just been hanging around here too because I like to do all the stuff in New York and in New Hampshire and stuff. But there's also some great hiking here in Vermont. Although I've done most of it at this point. So it kind of depends. This year I didn't really have like a goal, as in a list. But I did kind of have a goal, and it wasn't really something I ever talked about on YouTube or maybe I mentioned it on Trail Tales a couple times, but not too much. My friend Flossie and I, this year, we set the goal of trying to just hike over 400 miles. Didn't matter where, didn't